Playoffs? Don't talk about playoffs. You kidding me? Playoffs?
I love Jim Mora, but you know what, Bucs fans? It's still a possibility, kind of a flickering light, but for the Buccos, it's still alive thanks to their recent win over the San Francisco 49ers. Welcome to PierrePaul's podcast, A Few Extra Bucs. I'd like to thank our title sponsors, House of Brews, and of course, Sea Dog Brewing Company. Great brews, great food, great service. We're going to bring in Justin Thomas, our esteemed producer, who has brought down some sound from a lively Dirt Cutter press conference recently. You got everything rolling there, Justin?
I do. Isn't it weird, too? I kind of forgot what it's like to win after all these losses.
It's been over a month. Yeah, that was definitely a lively locker room as I bring in Roy Cummings. Roy, you've covered a lot of Buccaneer games recently and for years. It's amazing when you don't have a win for a while. It's always good when you win, but I felt even a different kind of energy in that locker room Sunday after the Niners game.
Yeah, that's really the I guess I wouldn't say amazing thing, but it is something that does stand out at you or jump out to you because it's amazing when you walk into that locker room. I mean, let's face it, Mike, we are used to walking into a Buccaneers locker room where there's a lot of hanging heads and guys not wanting to say much. And, there is a different vibe when you win. And it's look, I understand people are saying it's the 49ers. What kind of a win was it? A win's a win in the NFL. And it takes the pressure off when you work all week for something and you finally get rewarded for it. And you play as really, let's face it, you play as well as the Buccaneers did. I don't care who the opponent was. Look at just what the Buccaneers did. They played well. In virtually every facet of the game, they played well. And when you do that, you have a right to feel good about yourselves. And that's how you've heard that phrase before, winning breeds winning, losing breeds losing. Well, this is why. You go into that locker room after a Buccaneers win and you feel it. And guys like that feeling. And if they can figure out a way to kind of carry that over into the week, work a little bit harder in practice, work as efficiently in practice, and somehow then, when it really matters, carry it over into Sunday, maybe you pull out another win. That's how winning leads to more winning. So, hey, yes, it's a different atmosphere. It's a much more fun atmosphere. Guys, they get that, and they don't want to lose it. So we'll see what happens going forward. But this was a nice one.
Yeah, you could say it was the NFL's version of the toilet bowl, but that would be a cynical thing to say because of the struggles of both football teams. But I agree with you. You win in the NFL, especially with the team that I think checked off a lot of boxes against the San Francisco 49ers in terms of finally forcing a turnover. And then you had, JC Pierre-Paul getting double-digit sacks. That was nice to see for the first time since 2005. The defense had another solid effort. And then, of course, you had Jameis Winston, who, boy, did anybody need a clean game more in the NFL than Jameis Winston? No turnovers. Obviously, his best game of the year, over 300 yards passing and a couple touchdown passes. Here's what Dirt Cutter said about a clean game for Jameis Winston.
I thought he made really good decisions. He made decisive decisions. He didn't hold it too long, and he didn't wait for plays to develop that might happen. As time went on, he took the sure thing when it was there, and then he also did an excellent job. James also did an excellent job on scramble plays, making decisions outside the pocket, whether to throw or run.
I wonder how many times on Sunday, Roy, Jameis Winston kind of took some drop back steps and thought, better not do that. The old me would have done that. I can't do that. I mean, I know things are moving fast, but I would love to have read his mind so many times on that football field Sunday.
Yeah, I'm with you. I felt the same way. But you know what? We've seen this before from Jameis Winston, and I mean that in a good way. You go back to his first year when he threw 10 interceptions or whatever it was in his first 3, 4, 5 games. And then the second year where he kind of went through another stretch like that where he had a lot of turnovers. And then just recently, this stretch where he had too many turnovers in too few games. He has an ability to virtually flip a switch and in essence say to himself, okay, you know what? I can't do that anymore. I've got to be better than that. And he goes out and he is better than that. And he's better than that for, 2, 3, 4 weeks. And then he kind of falls back in to his old pattern of trying to do a little bit too much. The key, I think, for Jameis Winston becoming the winning quarterback, he's a good quarterback. He's an effective quarterback, but the key to him becoming a good winning quarterback is continuing to play games like he did this week, where his mindset is play hard, take your chances when they're there, but don't force the ball where a mistake is waiting to happen. So that's what he did. He knows he can do it. This is what the people who are ready, too soon to give up on Jameis Winston, so ready to give up on Jameis Winston, don't realize. He's capable of games like this. We've seen this before. We've seen him correct this turnover pattern of his. And all he has to do it is just concentrate on don't throw the ball away. Don't throw, and when I mean throw it away, don't throw it to the other team. Be smart enough to make the right decision in the right moment and make it quickly and decisively. He can do it. This is proof of it.
Well, another thing we see from Jameis Winston, Roy, is you always have the positive followed up by the negative often. And the negative this week, obviously the breaking news this week, is he settled his case with the Uber driver. This is finally behind him. I thought this could have been handled a lot better. Obviously, he got rid of his agent. But just talk about, your thoughts on how this was handled, because I thought it could have been a lot smoother from Jameis Winston on a lot of fronts.
Yeah, it could have been. And, I think a lot of us would have wanted to see him say a little bit more about the situation way back when he first started talking about it, when he came back to the team. But he couldn't because this was looming. There was always going to be a settlement there of some kind. And that's what Jameis Winston had to wait for. I don't think he'll say anything from this point on about it either. He'll put this behind him, and that's not a bad thing either. In essence, right now, this particular situation is clearly in the past. It's cleared the slate for him, and it's time to start over. All right? How are you from this point on? If he can be clean, not just on the field but off the field, from this point on, then there's absolutely every reason in the world to think Jameis Winston can still become a franchise quarterback. This is a good moment for him. It clears the slate and allows him to truly start over again with a new, clean slate. And if it's with a new coach next year, you know what? Maybe all the better. We'll see. But from his standpoint, clean slate, moving forward, let's see how long he can keep it clean. That's the key.
And that's exactly why you play him the rest of the season, to see if he can, you hope he stays clean off the field, but more importantly, if he can build off this game Sunday. I know, a win is a win in the NFL, but that wasn't the best team. I think Carolina is the perfect test coming up, but he's going to have the Saints. He's going to have some good teams. This is exactly why you got to play him the rest of the year.
Yeah, I agree with you. And here's the thing. A lot of people that were ready to give up on Jameis Winston didn't think the game he had last Sunday was in him. Okay, they didn't think he had that in him. The key now is to prove to everybody that you've got 4, 5, 6 of those in you in a row. That's all you can do at this point is play the next one and then the one after that and the one after that. He's not going to play perfect football, and people can't expect him to play perfect football. But he can play good, sound, decisive football, and that's what he has to do. He didn't become a game manager on Sunday. He made the long throws when he had to. He made good throws when he had to. He took a couple of chances here and there, and he threw a couple of passes that were, that had you, tensing up a little bit. But you know what? He threaded the needle because he's capable. So, yeah, this is what we need to see from him. And you're absolutely right. This is why he needs to play the rest of the season.
All right, we do multiple podcasts per week, and what I love about Roy Cummings is I never really tell him what we're going to talk about. It's a freelance podcast. I think it's looser that way. We can disagree sometimes. We don't expect to maybe agree. We usually agree more than disagree. But we're going to start a new segment. We'll have to get some music for this, but Justin and I talked about this. But I didn't tell Roy because Roy always rolls with the punches. It's called Studs and Duds. We're going to do this after we've kind of let the last Bucs game settle a little bit. Let's begin with your studs. It could be how many you want. It could be a number of guys on both sides of the ball. It could just be one if you're only happy with one guy. It could be whatever. But who are your studs from the last game, Roy?
Wow. You know what? There were several. I'll start with Jameis Winston. That's obvious. We've talked about him, but in my opinion, clearly he was a stud. I would say Carl Nassib was a stud. He's become a stud. He's pretty much been a stud since he came into into Tampa and join the Buccaneers. This is a guy who is resurrecting his career right in front of our eyes and playing some darn good football, earning himself a contract and an opportunity to stick around and be the starting left end for the Buccaneers going into 2019. Depends on the defensive coordinator, I guess. But my guess is that kid's earning himself a job somewhere. And the way he's playing right now, I hope it's here because he was a stud for me. And I'll tell you another stud, a guy who had been a dud throughout most of the season. In fact, had been a flat-out dud all season. Vita Vea. The kid came out, and I didn't see much in the first half, but second half, something happened. He figured something out, and it gives you a hope that moving forward, this kid's going to be a heck of a player. Here's a stud that a lot of people might not have noticed. Jordan Whitehead. This guy's catching my eye a little bit. Safety, number 31.
He's a good guy.
Yeah. I like this kid in coverage. He's solid. Not great, not good, but solid right now. But coming downhill against the run, I like this kid as a box safety, and he's making some plays. I'm going to put him in my stud category. And one other stud, and I'll admit that I give you, of course, I thought Jameis Winston was under pressure all day. And in fact, he was, and he did a tremendous job against pressure. If you look at the Pro Football Focus numbers, I think his passer rating was 145 against pressure, and he was under pressure and under siege all day long. Most of that, however, came from the interior. A guy who gets beat up a lot by the fans, Donovan Smith, had a tremendous day as a pass protector in particular. Pretty good day as a run blocker as well, but as a pass protector, he was really strong. So I'm going to give him a stud as well. Didn't give up any pressures, didn't give up any QB hits. Real good day for Donovan Smith, and I think he continues to get better every week.
Ladies and gentlemen, that is why Roy Cummings can hit anything I throw to him. It could be a knuckler, a curveball, a slider, knocks them all out of the park. All right, Justin, who are your studs?
Man, now I'm embarrassed because I did all this preparation. I got some stats, and I still feel like Roy's was better than mine.
No way.
No, mine are more simple. First, I got to go with Cairo Santos. Second week in a row that he's hit everything perfectly. When's the last time you could say that about a Bucs kicker when they've been perfect? My second stud, Peyton Barber. He didn't have the best game on paper, but when you look what he's done the last 5 games compared to the first 6 games of the season, he only had 260 yards total, 0 touchdowns running, 3.5 yards per carry on 74 carries. And then the last 5 games, he's upped it to 330 yards, 3 touchdowns on the ground, 4.1 yards per carry on almost the same amount of carries. So I think the running game all year, we've been talking about it, but it definitely seems like something's starting to happen. I think Peyton Barber's getting a lot of hard, tough yardage. Let's see. And my last stud is Jason Pierre-Paul. I mean, this guy, he's tied for 5th in the league with 10.5 sacks. I feel like for all year, he's been one of the bright spots on defenses and probably the best pickup in the offseason. So going to go with them 3.
Well, good research on your part. For my studs, I agree. Jason Pierre-Paul, to me, has really held this defense together in a lot of ways. We saw it in the preseason, how he played hard every snap, whether it was in practice or a game, has carried that over. And that's a streak. You know this, Roy. It's amazing they haven't had double-digit sacks since 2005. I mean, that's a long time. 13 years to not have that, really unprecedented when you look around the league. So it's good to see him get that, and he's only going to build off of that. I like Santos. I also like Peyton Barber as well. But I've been hard on Jameis Winston. And I agree with Roy. I don't think a lot of people thought he had that game in him. There's been a lot of pressure on Jameis Winston. He had to have felt that pressure going in. So, Jameis, you know what? I've been hard on you, but I'm going to give credit where credit's due. No interceptions, 29-38. That's really efficient, and the numbers were good. So now we go back to Roy for the duds.
Usually there's a team of duds, an army of them from the Buccaneers.
Yeah.
A little bit tougher to find them in this game.
Yeah.
But I'll start with an obvious one. Caleb Benenoch, the right guard, who I think he lost his job this week, finally. Alex Kappa was up, had a helmet on Sunday, and got into the game about midway through. Wasn't overly impressive, in my opinion. In fact, I would almost tend to give Alex Kappa a dud grade, except it was his first game, and I think he was a little bit overwhelmed at first, but he caught up eventually. But Caleb Benenoch was he was a dud again, and we may have seen the last of Caleb Benenoch, perhaps even with the Buccaneers overall. I say that because I'm not sure what his contract situation is, but at this point, he's a guy who could get cut. I don't know if you want him around even as a backup at this point. You may feel that, he helps you depth-wise, but I would say maybe not. So we may have seen the last of Caleb Benenoch. So that's a dud for me. Another dud on the offensive side of the ball, DeSean Jackson. I think the guy's quit. I don't think he's interested. I understand he had a bad thumb, okay? And he's getting that taken a look at. But the first ball of the game went to him. He couldn't hold on to it. Might have been the thumb there. Who knows? Maybe he injured it again on that play because he wasn't any good the rest of the day, in my opinion. There was a long pass to DeSean Jackson down the field. It was supposed to be a post pattern. And a post pattern, the quarterback's job is to throw to the post being the goalposts, right? Nowadays, it's the center upright, the thing that holds the whole thing up, right? That's where the quarterback's supposed to throw the ball. The job of the receiver is to head for that spot. Well, DeSean Jackson didn't head for that spot, and that's why that pass didn't get caught. It's pretty hard to overthrow DeSean Jackson, but somehow Jameis Winston finds a way, and I'm not so sure that it's Jameis Winston's fault. I think that for the last 2 years, DeSean Jackson has been collecting a paycheck for this club. I don't think he's been too interested in playing here. People talk about DeSean Jackson's chemistry with the quarterback, with Jameis Winston, and his chemistry with Ryan Fitzpatrick. Jameis Winston doesn't seem to have any problem at all. His chemistry with Cameron Brate, Mike Evans, Adam Humphries, Chris Godwin seems exceptional. He's even got a chemistry. Jameis Winston, he's got a chemistry with the other team. He doesn't have one with DeSean Jackson. So who's the outlier here? I think it's DeSean Jackson. So a dud for him, and a dud on the defensive side, Brent Grimes. It was interesting that as I was walking to the locker room on Sunday, guys, I saw two guys come out, and this is as soon as the locker room opened up. Two guys came, as the media is going in the one door. I was a little bit behind the crowd. As the media is going in the far door, the near door in the locker room, two guys are coming out of it. DeSean Jackson and my third dud, Brent Grimes. I think Brent Grimes has quit. I don't think he's interested in playing football much anymore. He doesn't mind covering guys. I think he still gets a bit of a kick out of that now and then. He's got no interest in tackling anybody. He didn't this past Sunday, that's for darn sure. He ran up short of tackle situations when another body was needed to make sure that another yard wasn't gained. He jumped out of the way of a couple of tackles. He had no interest. He finished the game with 3 tackles. I think somebody kicked him in the ass and said, hey, if you want to keep earning that paycheck, get your butt out there and finish off the game the right way. But he had no interest for about 3/4 of that game in playing football. So he would be my third dud.
Wow, that's very comprehensive. I'm not going to tell you about any future segments because you're killing us here in a good way. Justin, who are your dud?
First, I'm going to reiterate what Roy said. DeSean Jackson was my first one. And to just further illustrate how much I also believe he's quit on the team, he has 750 yards total this season. The last 6 games, guys, he only has 249 yards. That's insane. Wow. It's like all of a sudden he just went off a cliff. He has the same amount of touchdowns as Chris Godwin, Adam Humphries, Cam Brate with 4. I just think, like Roy said, he's given up. It almost seems like around the time a couple of weeks ago when rumors started coming out, if he was going to be traded and him kind of speaking out, it seems like that's when he decided to just not care anymore. My last 2 are kind of nitpicky. I'm going to go with the run defense. I think the defensive line was great. They got a lot of pressure on the QB, 4 sacks, I believe, a lot of tackles for loss, but they also gave up 148 yards on the ground to a team that was playing from behind the whole game. So that's kind of something you might want to look into. And then my last one is fan attendance. I don't know if y'all heard, but this was the lowest attended game since 2010. I think it was about 40,300 and some fans showed up. And I understand that the Bucs are bad and that tickets can be kind of pricey, but you hate to see that, little people show up to a game for the Bucs.
Yeah, and I'll say this: not only was it the worst in 8 years, I guess, but the TV ratings, Roy and Justin, were lower for the Bucs than the USF UCF game, and I don't track those numbers all the time, and I know UCF's a strong team this year, but that's pretty pathetic, Roy, in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it really is. It's a good one, Justin. You were right on the mark with that. Although I'll say this, I can't blame the fans.
No,
they're fed up with this. They've been seeing it for a long time. Look, I said at the beginning of the year, I thought this offense alone was worth the price of admission. I'm not so sure it is anymore because everything else around it with the Buccaneers just seems so toxic. We're pretty sure they're going to fire the coach. They may change regimes again. It was a beautiful day Sunday. Maybe it was just everybody thought it was a day to do something else. But it's pretty. Look, rare is the weekend when USF, I don't care who they're playing, outdraws the Buccaneers. But it happened this weekend. And you know what? Going into the game on Sunday, driving up to the stadium, that hit me. I thought, you know what? This is going to be a week when USF is going to outdraw the Bucs because I knew they wouldn't get any more than about 45,000 for that game. And because the opponent isn't a team that travels well, so to speak, certainly from San Francisco to Tampa. Had it been the Packers or the Bears or somebody like that, a New York team, the Jets or Giants, they might have had 58, 60,000 there. But with a team like San Francisco, 2-9 coming in, not a chance. And it's sad. It really is. It's something we could talk about in future podcasts about just how sad the situation is here regarding the fan base. It's so turned off. It's remarkable.
Well, you guys touched them all pretty much. I agree with everything you've said, but let's make it unanimous. D-Jax is a dud on so many levels. The first guy off the field, we were waiting there outside the locker room. First guy off the field, couldn't get off the field fast enough. And, oh, by the way, it was a victory, D-Jax. He just didn't seem like he had any celebratory bone in his body walking off that field. And, by the way, Grimes was right behind him in the locker room there. I just think, if he is hurt, I don't wish injury on anybody, but let's just say he's hurt and it's prolonged. He had to get a second opinion on his thumb in New York. If he's not in the mix down the stretch and Jameis's numbers improve, and he feels more and more comfortable out there, I don't think it's any coincidence at all. But here's what Dirk Cutter said defending his beleaguered wide receiver.
We just flat missed him 5 times. I mean, one of those was a tough over-the-top shot that Jameis overthrew, but there was 4 other times that DeSean was open, and we just missed him. And Jameis, we didn't miss very many throws yesterday, but the ones we didn't miss, unfortunately, were mostly to DeSean.
I think he's being politically correct, Roy.
Yeah, I think he is a little bit, and here's why. Look, go back to 2 years ago when DeSean Jackson first got here. He didn't show up at OTAs. He showed up at the mandatory minicamp because it was mandatory. He showed up for training camp, and he was wearing crib notes in his socks because he didn't know the plays. And Todd Monken basically told him, you wouldn't have to pull that stupid piece of paper out of your socks and ask me what the play is if you'd been here during OTAs. He wasn't interested. And I guess he spent a little bit more time here this year trying to get to know Jameis Winston and everything else. And then Jameis got suspended, and he decided that Fitzpatrick was his guy. It's been a bad marriage from the beginning. If I were the Buccaneers at this point, my point is, this is on DeSean Jackson. As I said earlier, Jameis Winston has a tremendous chemistry with every other wide receiver on this team. Why is it that he doesn't have a good chemistry with DeSean Jackson? What's the difference there? I think the difference is DeSean Jackson, in my opinion, just my opinion, doesn't bust his ass during practice or any other time to make that relationship better. I don't think he's working at it the way everybody else has worked at it. And you do have guys who are working at it. Mike Evans works his butt off every day to be the player that he is. Adam Humphries had to work his butt off just to get on the team and to get passes. Chris Godwin is working his butt off because he knows I'm going to be standing on the sidelines with all this talent around me if I don't show that I'm a good player. So Cameron Brate busting his ass even harder, at first just to make it in the NFL, then just to stick around in the NFL, then to stick around and be relevant after the team goes out and makes O.J. Howard the 11th overall pick in the draft. So here are 4 guys who are constantly working on their relationship and their chemistry with Jameis Winston. The guy who I don't see working on it constantly and consistently is DeSean Jackson. And if I were the Buccaneers, I'd be taking a look at guys like Reedy, Freddie Martino, those types, saying, all right, what else can I find out there in terms of players? And I would just tell DeSean, you know what, we're good. We're good.
I always like your perspective because you've been around this franchise a long time. DeSean is kind of like Keyshawn, and they're both me-Shawns. You've covered Keyshawn Johnson, and obviously you're covering DeSean Jackson now. I love dealing with Keyshawn from a media standpoint. I don't know if I want to be his teammate, but do you see any parallels there at all?
Oh, God, you're absolutely right. The only difference is that DeSean doesn't talk the way Keyshawn did. Keyshawn never shut the hell up, and it was always about him. DeSean never says a word, but it's always about him. So it's pretty sad that it's come to that. But you know what? You're right. He's a diva on a team that really doesn't have a bunch of divas at receiver. Mike Evans isn't a diva. I mean, he's not. You ask Mike Evans if you called Mike Evans a diva, he might slap you. He'd be furious if you called him that.
And I like that about Mike Evans. Yeah, Mike Evans talks win or lose. If DeSean Jackson, you never know when the hell he's going to talk during the week, after a game, after a win, after a loss. Mike Evans is always in there, and he's feisty on the field too. Doesn't take any crap from anybody. I mean, I love so much about Mike Evans, and also the whole Jameis debacle in New Orleans last year. Mike Evans just thought his quarterback was getting picked on. He wasn't being a punk or anything. He was sticking up for his teammates. So, yeah, I agree. All right, let's shift gears before we get to 3 and out. We had fun with Jim Mora's infamous playoffs rant at the beginning of the podcast. But here was Dirk Cutter on the possibility of the Buccos making the playoffs with a big win against San Francisco and a potential streak down the stretch.
It's a week-to-week league, and, we had a good week. We played well in all phases, and, Carolina this week brings a whole new set of challenges.
Again, didn't mention the word playoffs, but what do you think, Roy? You got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games left.
Yeah, look, they're not out of it. I don't think they'll be favored in any of these 5 games going forward. Certainly not this week, but you know what? They're playing at home. They got a little bit of confidence now. Quarterback figured something out. A couple of guys on defense that hadn't been showing up are starting to show up a little bit more. They're still a beat-up football team. They're still missing some of their best players, particularly on the defensive side of the ball. The chips are way stacked against them. But, and you guys know this because you guys are close followers of the Saints, there were a couple of years in a row there where the Saints were one team in one half and another team in another half. It's quite possible the Bucs are the same. If the Bucs can somehow be a real strong second-half team and upset Carolina this weekend, all of a sudden that momentum starts to build. Atlanta's beatable. The Saints, they've beaten them once on the road. They can certainly beat them here. At Baltimore, winnable game. I don't see anything. Dallas, winnable game. I don't see any of the games going forward where, again, I don't see them being favored, but I also don't say that, they're 14-point underdogs either. I think they're all games that they can win if they play the kind of football they played this past week.
Love it. Yeah, anything can happen in the NFL. I just think it's too little too late. I would have liked to have seen them win the Redskins game, win the Giants game. Then they don't have to win out if they win those games, there's a little more wiggle room, especially when you look at the watered-down NFC with teams like the Packers and the Redskins and the Giants and some of those teams struggling this year. So I think it's a little too late for the Buccos, but it's never too late for this, Justin.
You're absolutely right.
Man, I can't get enough of that. 3 and out, 3 questions, and we are out. We threw the studs and the duds at Roy. He knocked them both out of the park. 3 questions. We don't know what's coming. The last one you guys are really going to love. But let me throw out the first one. We have 5 games left. Who was your Bucs MVP this season, guys? I have 2 candidates. Is it Jason Pierre-Paul or is it Mike Evans?
It's Mike Evans.
Or you can throw somebody else in if you want to.
It's Mike Evans for me. I mean, it was really the first guy that came to my mind. The reason being that, look, the Buccaneers have, arguably one of the best 3 offenses in the NFL. Depending on which week it is, they're leading the league in total offense, second in the league in total points. Go on down the line, lead the league in passing, and that's in great part because of Mike Evans. The defense has been one of the worst. I hate to say it, guys, but hey, I wrote it on Sunday in my wrap-up of the Bucs win. I'm happy for Jason Pierre-Paul. Love what he did for this team this year, but I'm not sure I've ever seen a more empty stat than his 10 sacks. Doesn't make a darn bit of difference. All it shows you is that you can still have the worst. You can have 10 sacks and still be a member of the worst defense in the NFL, and arguably one of the worst defenses in NFL history.
Justin.
I agree. I think Mike Evans, I mean, y'all said it all this whole podcast, the way he plays, that he really goes out there, gives it his best. I think he's a great person. What he's done, you got to go with Mike Evans.
I'm going to go contrarian. I love Mike Evans. I love everything about him. I love his attitude on and off the field. But I think this Bucs defense, and I agree with you, Roy, a lot of the sacks, it's kind of misleading. But what I like about Jason Pierre-Paul is he always says he's kind of that leader by example. He's been leader by example in his play, but he's also been a vocal guy. I remember him on the sidelines when they were getting tormented by the Bears, kind of lighting up the guys on the sideline. I like the fact that he got hurt against the Niners, was right back out there. He's been banged up for weeks now. All these defensive linemen are banged up for weeks. So I'm going to go contrarian on this one. I like Jason Pierre-Paul by the way he plays, and I think if they can shore up the linebacking core, maybe get Beckwith back next year, Quan Alexander back in the fold, David, all those guys play like they normally can, and you get maybe a free agent corner and Hargraves bounces back. I love having Jason Pierre-Paul as kind of the heartbeat of that Bucs defense because, Gerald McCoy is a different kind of leader. I think Jason Pierre-Paul is the kind of leader they've needed for a long time out there. All right, one of my favorite topics is overtime. I hate ties. Finally, the NHL shored that up a few seasons ago by doing a shootout. But I hate ties in the NFL. We've had 2 of them this year. I'm watching that crazy LSU Texas A&M game the other night. 7 overtimes. You score over 70 points and you lose the football game. Terrible officiating in the game, and I'm not a blame the officials guy. But should the NFL adopt college football's overtime? What do you think, Roy?
I don't think so. I think the NFL is better than that, and I would just play until you have a winner. If you've gone 15 minutes, just start another quarter and, sudden death. First team to score. I don't care how you score. It's, I like the rules as they are now. But if you've had a quarter of, where is anybody going? The reason the NHL has changed its overtime is because teams have to travel. Sometimes they have back-to-back games. Sometimes they're playing 3 games in 4 nights or 2 and 3 nights. They have to travel. They have to be somewhere. The NFL, you're not going anywhere. You've got until, at worst, you've got until Thursday night. You'll be fine. They'll be able to get I think they should just play until somebody wins.
Justin, what do you think?
I have to agree. I remember 2009 in the postseason, everyone was upset with the way the Saints-Vikings game went, so they changed the rules on that. And then earlier this year, there was the shootout in Atlanta. That went to overtime. Saints got the coin toss, went down the field immediately, scored a touchdown. So then people were complaining they need to change it again. I just feel like people don't want to consider defenses anymore. I mean, if the other team wants to win, they need to stop them. And so I agree with, like Roy said, go till the clock ends. Whoever has the most points wins.
Well, I think if you go to the college format, you can't include the stats. Take the stats out because that's ridiculous and it disrespects, touchdown passes from previous generations. I love the college format. I love the fact that after, if you have to go for 2 and all that, and the way the NFL offenses are played, I think that would be highly entertaining. And I will say, I like Roy's point that you keep playing. I can't stand the NFL overtime. I'm glad they finally made it where they kind of adjusted if you can't just kick a field goal and win it and all that. But I would like to see it. I think it's highly entertaining, college football. I mean, it's such an outlier with the LSU game in Texas A&M, especially man, some of those calls. Again, I'm not a big blame the officials guy, but man, some of those calls were just brutal. And I felt for LSU, and I had no dog in the fight. So I frankly would like to see it, but I think they still got to tweak the NFL system and make it more like the college. Maybe not all the way, but maybe halfway or something. So, all right, you guys are going to love this. Do you know who's in Tampa this week? He may be I'm not sure if he's tonight, but Elton John is in Tampa this week. Should have flown Justin in for a Roy Justin Elton John love fest. And I could just sit in the car and listen to my Billy Joel's greatest hits.
Yeah.
But Elton John's in town, so I thought because we had the poll earlier this season, who's better, Elton John or Billy Joel? You guys said Elton John. I said Billy Joel. What's your favorite Elton John song?
Someone Saved My Life Tonight.
No hesitation.
No hesitation whatsoever.
That was pretty quick.
No hesitation whatsoever.
Wow. Justin.
Oh, man. Oh.
I'll give Justin a little bit of time here. Goodbye Yellow Brick Road is pretty good too.
Which one? Oh yeah, Goodbye Yellow Brick Road is good.
But that's where I'm at right there.
This is going to be cliche, but it's probably one of the first songs I remember hearing by him, and something about it. I really like it. I think right now, off the top of my head, I'm going to go with Rocket Man.
It's like his signature song. You can't say that's wrong.
No, but it's a little cliche. I just, I love all his music, but something about that song, anytime it comes on, it's like a good movie. Anytime it comes on, you got to listen to the whole thing.
Yeah, you're right about that. Yeah.
I like Roy's filibuster for Justin. That was very nice, Roy.
Just wanted to give him a little bit of time to think it over,
That was good stuff. That's the way the government should work. We're all brothers, man. We all got to work together.
Exactly.
My favorite song, I'm going to bring this whole thing full circle. It also encompasses the theme of the Bucs right now. I'm Still Standing.
Very good.
How about that?
Yeah. All right.
Well, listen, from Studs and Duds to Elton John, that wraps up another Few Extra Bucs here on PierrePaul.com. Remember, subscribe to PierrePaul.com. It's absolutely free. We'd like to thank our title sponsors, House of Brews and Sea Dog Brewing Company. Great beers, great food, great service. For our producer, Justin Thomas, for our Buccaneer insider, Roy Cummings, I am merely Mike Nabors. We will talk to you later this week. Thanks for logging on.